Okay, let's begin. Tonight's session is the third part of the laws of family purity, and it's going to be mostly dedicated to dealing with the halachot of a woman who is pregnant or nursing, or we'll talk a little bit about those women who are no longer having their period, the stage of menopause, towards the end. Quite a few details just in this area. I thought I was going to be able to cover the laws of ktamim, of stains, but that will have to wait maybe for next week. And we still need to do the more important halachot that the men, the husbands also need to know and be aware of it. That is the dinim of the archakot. During that time that the woman is nidah, what they both need to be aware of, what they cannot do. So that will be coming as well. But let's talk a little bit about what happens to a woman who becomes pregnant, what happens when she gives birth. B'ezrat Hashem, for all of those of you who are still single, B'ezrat Hashem, and you will have children, these are very special times. A woman becomes pregnant, or is considered pregnant according to Jewish law, after 3 months. That may surprise you, because there are ways to tell if a woman is pregnant even prior to the 3. There are exams that she can take. Her doctor can tell her, confirm it, and she can feel somehow that things are different. Nevertheless, it's important to note that as far as the halakha is concerned, for her to be considered pregnant and what that entails, it's only on condition that 3 months have elapsed. Before the 3 months have elapsed, she's not considered pregnant as far as the halachot are. She may be pregnant, but she's not considered pregnant as far as the halachot. There are different types of halachot, some of which we have not covered yet, and they have to deal with the various types of cycles. You know, women can have a regular cycle, and they can have an irregular cycle. And if it's irregular, it's a little bit more complex. The woman needs to watch out for certain days where she may have her period. Since she's irregular and she's unsure, there are 3 possibilities, 3 times where she may have that period. It could be either 30 days apart. We'll talk about it when we speak about the cycles. It could be an exact same day of the month, the following month, or it could be at some other time. She needs to look out for these various periods. For example, another time would be the difference between her last period, her last 2 periods. They may have lasted 26. There are various types of times that a woman who has an irregular cycle will need to look out for. And therefore, it's important to know when she becomes pregnant, because once she's halachically considered pregnant, she doesn't have to worry so much about those times, because we have a rule that at certain stages, pregnancy being one, she's not supposed to see blood. You follow me? She still may see, we'll talk about that soon, but she's not supposed to. Since she's not supposed to see, after the 3 month period, she doesn't have to be concerned about watching out for those days. Because during those days, which we'll talk about eventually, there cannot be marital relationships. At least she has to watch out and look out for them and take certain precautions. Once she's for sure pregnant, she doesn't have to be as concerned about these things. However, it may happen that she has dam or ketem, she may have blood or staining during this time. It's not 100% guarantee just because a woman is pregnant that she will see no blood or no stain. She could see. It may happen. Chas v'shalom, she should not have this problem when she's right, towards the end. It could be a big medical problem. But in the beginning, it's possible, and if she does see it, she may want to go to the doctor, of course, if it's unusual, but it still would render her a nidah. She would still become unclean, even though she's pregnant. After all, that dam is coming from the makor, from the womb, and would make her unclean. Unless, of course, as we've mentioned in the past, it's for sure an injury of some sort. But we're not talking about injuries right now. If it's just regular blood, somehow she does have the period, or even she has stains. And stains, we haven't spoken about what stain makes her unclean, but assuming that it is a stain that would make her unclean, the halachot of nidah would apply even during her pregnancy. However, there is one difference between being pregnant and not being pregnant, and that is when it comes to hargashot. Hargasha is different when one is pregnant. When one is not pregnant, we spoke about the various types of sensations a woman may have. That sensation is not your typical headache right before the period, the onslaught of the period. It's a sensation that the womb or the uterus has opened up, or there's something flowing in her, or that she begins to tremble. If that sensation would occur during the regular time of the year when she's not pregnant, she has to be concerned that there may be blood. She needs to check herself immediately. The most powerful sensation is when she feels something is opening up. In other words, if the womb is opening up. Even if she were not to discover blood, she would be unclean. Because we assume whenever the womb opens up that there is blood, but it may have somehow disappeared or being covered up by some other fluid. So that sensation during the regular time of the year when she's not pregnant would require an examination, and if she were, of course, find a clean fluid, like something that's colored green, yellow, or white, no problem. But if the problem is when she found real blood or when she found nothing at all, in the case of that powerful sensation, she would still be unclean. During the time she's pregnant, that's not a problem. She checks herself, she still needs to check herself, but if there's nothing, she doesn't have to be worried about it, because we're not expecting any blood during that time, during the time of the pregnancy. When does it become a little complicated? When she goes for her examination. And I put this in English because it's the various types. You have the general gynecology exam, but there's various types of exams that doctors perform for a woman who is pregnant, or even when she's not pregnant. At certain stages of her life, there might be, when she's pregnant, something called an amniotic fluid exam, or something called a pap smear. And I guess the men don't have to be concerned about remembering these terms. The women know about it. Some of them have to do with the health of the woman, to see if there's any cysts, or if there's cancer, growth. These are sometimes routine examinations, but especially when she's pregnant, these exams may occur more than once. And what happens during these exams is that a doctor may insert his finger or an instrument over there, and that may bring about blood. Eventually, I'll talk a little bit more about examinations, but at least for a woman who's pregnant, this might be an issue. She's not expecting blood, but blood may come out as a result of the doctor going too deep, too far. Now, if the doctor did something and blood came out and he says, I assure you, Mrs., that this is from an abrasion, in other words, it's not from all the way inside, it's just that you got hurt a little bit, then I guess you can trust the doctor if he's sure about that. But otherwise, it may be blood from inside, and it may make her So these types of examinations require that one find out what instrument the doctor used, if that instrument can cause blood, and if he penetrated deep inside the womb. If he's not going to go too deep, especially if he uses his fingers, he can't go too deep. But if he uses an instrument, especially if it's a long instrument, he may be able to go deep, and he may open up with that instrument the womb. And by opening it up, even if there's no blood, the fact that it's wide open, if it's wide enough, it may render her unclean. So these are issues that if it ever come about, and you have any doubts, you should definitely consult with a rabbi who specializes, is familiar with Hilchot Nidah. And some of the things to keep in mind is the instrument, the type of instrument, the size of the instrument, the doctor, what he did exactly, what kind of an exam was involved, just to make sure that if you don't see any blood, because if you see blood, then you just have to figure out, is it from an injury or not? But even if you don't see blood, you need to see what did the doctor actually do when he put that instrument, how far did it go? So if it's a stain, if a woman is staining after an exam, all that needs to be determined is if an injury or not. If it's not from an injury, then we would have to look at the stain to see if it qualifies as an unclean stain or not, depending on the size and so forth. It would be a good idea for a woman during those types of examinations to wear colored undergarments. As we will explain later on, they will prevent her from becoming a nidah if she does in fact see certain stains. However, it's strongly discouraged, if at all possible, not to go to such an examination when she is during the time of the Shiva Nekiyim. During the regular time when a woman waits 4 or 5 days for the blood to stop and then waits 7 clean days. During those 7 clean days, she has to be careful that there's no stains. So that's a very sensitive period, and you don't want to go to the doctor during those 7 days, dafka, because, it could be more of a problem in case there's a stain at that time. So avoid it at all costs. Yes, you were going to ask something? Colored undergarments, yeah. When we talk about stains, I briefly spoke about it, but I'll mention it to you now again. Stains are midrabanan, not midoraita. If there's no hargasha, there's no sensation, all she sees is a stain. Unless she actually sees blood because she checked herself, that's not called a stain. If a woman checks herself and she sees, oh, there's blood, that's different. But if all of a sudden she finds a stain on the sheet, in the bed, on herself, on her body, or on the undergarment, there's a question, what do we do now? Is she a nidah or not? So there are various halachot, depending on the size and depending where she found it. And if she finds it on a color undergarment, it makes things easier. It makes life easier because it has to be red or close to red. And since it's on a color undergarment, there's a certain lenience, a kula, that makes life easier for the woman, that she doesn't have to be as concerned. If it's bright white, then you can obviously identify what color it is. And certain colors are tameh, certain colors are not. So because it's only midrabanan, there's that leniency of wearing a color undergarment at all times, except for during the Sheva Nekiyim. where it has to be completely clean. In the rest of the year, a woman is advised and encouraged to always wear colored underwear. So she should not have these problems of staining. But B'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about that when we get maybe next week, about the whole area of staining. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about childbirth. So we spoke a little bit about pregnancy. What happens during childbirth? The Torah in Parashat Ki Tazria says something very interesting. Up until now, we were only familiar with one type of tum'ah with a woman, the tum'ah of nidah. There's also tum'ah of zava, but as far as we're concerned today, zava nidah is synonymous. But there's one more type of tum'ah that the Torah discusses, and that is the tum'ah of leidah, of childbirth. Different kind of blood, different type of impurity. And only makes a difference if she had a girl or she had a boy. So now, you don't only have to be concerned if you're going to throw a big party or a small party, if there's going to be a brit milah or not. There's another issue for the woman here. How long she becomes teme'ah if she gave birth. It all depends what she gave birth to, a boy or a girl. So the Torah says, Isha ki tazri'a v'yaleda zachar v'tame'ah shiv'at yamin. Kimei nidat devotach. If she gives birth, even if she doesn't see any blood. I mean, that's very unusual, but she still has a tumah of leidah. And how long is that tumah? 7 days. Whether she sees 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, or the full 7. After the 7th day, she, according to the Torah, she can immerse herself in the mikveh. That's if it's a boy. Right. But in nekeva teled v'tame'ah shavu'ayin kenidatach. But if she gives birth to a girl, it's 14 days. Tumat leidah, according to the Torah. After which you can go to the mikveh. Today, because of what I've mentioned in the past, there's something called zava and nidah, and how they're synonymous. And women, Jewish women, are also very much makpid on assumed all the humrot, all the strict halachot, even on stains. Today we don't distinguish, therefore, between what type of blood there is, and even upon birth, a woman will have the shiv'ah nikiyim, the 7 clean days after she stops seeing blood. In other words, after she stops seeing blood, let's say it's a boy, she waits 7 clean days, and she can go to the mikveh. In other words, it's very possible that the entire period of time after the birth will last 12 days. There is your minimum 5 plus the 7 clean days. What about if she saw very little blood? Or what if he was a nidah prior to giving? The days can be concurrent. You understand what concurrent means? In other words, she can gain. She doesn't have to have more than 7 days. In other words, if she started having the blood a little earlier, before she was giving birth, and she stopped seeing blood, she can begin her 7 clean days. For a boy, the minimum will always be 7, according to the Din Torah. So since she started a little early, right, as soon as she stops, she can begin her 7 clean days. No problem. With a girl, however, it will always have to be 14. So that's the Torah says, the total tumat leidah is 14 days, right? So therefore, let's say she stops seeing blood after 5 days, okay? Somehow, she's lucky, only 5 days of blood after childbirth, after which she waits 7 nekiyim, there's no more blood, so she can start to sheva nekiyim. She cannot go to the mikveh on the night of the 13th. She has to wait till the night of the 15th. Because you're always going to have the minimum of 14 days for a girl and 7 days for a boy. You can't have it less than that. Now, all of this doesn't really make that much of a difference nowadays. You know why? Most women see blood for at least 3 weeks. There's a little bit of blood, a little bit of staining. She cannot do her hefsek tahara and begin her 7 clean days, the count of 17 days, until after 3 weeks. Some even 4, 5, 6 weeks. So this is not always an issue anyway. But somehow, if she was able to start earlier, she would have to keep that in mind, that the tum'ah of a zachar, of a boy, is 7 days. The tum'ah of a girl is 14. Oh, good question. Very good question. What if it's twins? So if it's 2 boys, it's not a problem. The same thing, right? Especially if they were born the same day. If they were born 2 separate days, then of course you consider the last one. You start from the first one, but you have to consider the last one too, as far as how far you go. 2 girls, it's also not a problem. Similarly, if it's the same day, 14 days, right? And in any case, it will be at least a total of 14 days that you won't go to the mikveh until the night of the 15th at the earliest. But what if it's a boy and a girl? Then of course it becomes teme'ah from the very first birth, whoever was first, right? But because one of them is a girl, she still has the minimum of 14. So these issues come up once in a while, but as I said before, most women have blood for quite a time, 3 weeks or more. And so this never becomes an issue. Alright, Chaz v'shalom, we should never know of this, but there can be miscarriages.
It happens. Some women, they should not be discouraged. Many women become very depressed when that happens, but they should remember one thing. The rabbis tell us that even the Nephilim zochim lechaye olam haba. Once the egg has become fertilized, that particular seed, zoche, merits already to be in olam haba. Even if it was miscarried, that neshama, for whatever reason it happened, it's a tikkun. That in itself is considered already a life, at least for it to have olam haba. Nothing to be discouraged about. In other words, something was already accomplished, even though it terminated early. Still zoche le'olam haba. The neshama enters, sure. A part of the neshama enters at the 40 yom kodem yetzirat havlat, which is conception, right? The ruach enters at the time of birth. In other words, there's something that enters at the time that the child exits the womb. If you were able to see it, you would see something enter. And some people could see it. Yeah. At what time? At what point? At the time of what? Conception is not intimacy. Conception can happen a couple days later, not necessarily right away, immediately. It depends when the woman ovulated, okay? If the ovulation was before the intimacy, before the marital relationship, then of course, within a number of hours or so, I would expect that there should be fertilization. That's true. But depending on the ovulation of when that occurs. So that's when a portion of the neshama enters. Something of the neshama enters, because that is when it's decided what will be. Who is this neshama? Who's going to enter? Right? What kind of a mazalit will it have? That is determined at the time of conception. But anyway, because miscarriages occur, yes. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. That's next. There's nevertheless a difference in the miscarriages of when they occur, whether they occurred before 40 days or after 40 days. The formation of the fetus is at 40 days. There's a lot of halachot concerning whatever is there prior to the 40 days. After the 40 days, not before, that begins to take shape. And any abortion, halila, is a terrible avon, a terrible sin. Yes. One is never allowed to abort. One is not allowed to even shed the seed in vain. But there is differences in the halacha of what constitutes a valad, a fetus which is beginning to be developed. This is a question, in this country and in other countries too. But in the halacha, it doesn't make that much of a difference because at all times it's a sort to abort. You don't want to abort unless the woman's life is in danger. And we'll talk about that when we speak about contraception, towards the end. You never want to abort unless, chas v'shalom, the woman's life is in danger. But after 40 days, this valad has certain halachot, and especially if there was a miscarriage. Because if there was a miscarriage before 40 days, there's no tum'ah of leidah. Before 40 days, there's no tum'ah of leidah. There could be other blood there, and she may be tme'ah lakenidah, but not tum'ah leidah. Tum'ah of leidah can only come about after 40 days. And then you want to know whether this was going to be a girl or going to be a boy. Because you want to know how long to wait with the tum'ah of leidah. If there was halila, God forbid, a miscarriage. What if you don't know if it was a girl or a boy? So misafek, as a result of the doubt, you wait like it would be a girl. You're in doubt, unless you know. So this is only concerning the tum'ah of leidah. Either way, you're going to have blood. If you're going to have blood, you're going to have some tum'ah. But we want to know if there was leidah or not. That is determined by 40 days. Once it's more than 40 days, there is tum'ah leidah. Prior to 40 days, there's no tum'ah. A woman who has a cesarean, however, what do you say? There was no vaginal blood. Or was there? What? So there's no tum'ah of leidah. There's no blood whatsoever. She's not even unclean. But guess what? From what I'm told, today most cesareans there's always some blood, vaginal blood, and she's going to be at least tme'ah nida. There's some blood there. But it's not a regular birth. So you don't have the tum'ah of leidah. Now, since I'm already talking about cesarean birth, let me just remind you that this is not something that the rabbis encourage. So when do you want to have your child? On Sunday or Monday? Or does it depend when people are going to be in town? We don't do these things of timing and figuring out and choosing cesarean births and so forth, unless there's no choice. If the doctors all say that she needs to have a cesarean birth, obviously it's dangerous otherwise to her, so she's going to have it. Then let them figure out the best time. They have to be careful that it's not too early, otherwise you're endangering the woman and her child. Every time remember that there is an operation, it's risky. So you don't want to do it if you don't have to. Get a beracha from a tzaddik that you shouldn't have to go to a cesarean birth, but it should be a natural birth. But if you have to, if it's clear that this is important for the woman, then fine. Otherwise you don't just play around with cesarean birth. Another idea is that I call it the acceleration. You overdo, you're past your due date, missus. Come, we'll induce you. No, we don't induce. We don't believe in inducing. Inducing is giving a shot for a woman to let her start the contractions already. She's past her due date. First of all, even if they used ultrasound, I can guarantee you, and I have experience, Baruch Hashem, that they're not always accurate. They may have gotten better at it. Our calculations are always better, because a woman can only become pregnant within a number of days after she comes back from the mikveh. So you can figure out, if you want to know how pregnant she is, right? You have a question of to see whether she passed the 40 days or not passed the 40 days, whether it's 3 months or not 3 months. You don't rely on the doctor to tell you, oh, you're 95 days pregnant, or so many weeks, as they say, right? No, we rely on our calculations in order to, if we need to determine any of these halachot as far as before 3 months or after 3 months, before 40 days or after 40 days. We have a better idea. We know when it could have happened. We don't rely on what the machines say when it comes to these halachot. So therefore, when it comes to inducing, even if it's past the due date, first of all, who says it's past the due date? How do they know? A woman can give birth even in the 11th month. Sometimes it could happen. As long as the child is not in any danger, the fetus is not in any danger, and the woman is not in any danger, let her go, as long as she needs to. Let the child go inside. Let him learn more Torah. Right? They learn Torah while they're in the womb. As long as there's no immediate danger, there's no reason in the world to interfere with Hashem's plan of when that child needs to come into this world. When the true labor pains begin, that is when Hashem has prepared it for nature, for the Teva, for Hashem's plan, right, for this child to come into the world. But to tell the doctor, I want it this day, or please, it's past my due date, let it happen, no, we don't do that. Unless there's a danger. Yes, yeah, right.
You also know, Rabbi, during the first 40 days, you can dominate those sex.
Before the 40 days, you
How
could.
would you do that? Dominate.
Yeah, because it's not being formed yet. Right? Up until 40 days, right, you can still influence the decision. Yeah, you can still influence the decision. So you can pray, and you should pray if you have something in mind, up until 40 days. After 40 days, you continue to pray, but for the child to be born, for it to be healthy, for it to develop properly. And right before the woman gives birth, for you to pray that they both should be healthy, right? So you're always praying. But as far as what Zachar or Nekeva, male or female, up until 40 days, after that it's too late. It's already been set, it's already being formed, it's already taking shape as far as organs, etc. Up until then, there's no real. No, I hope there is unison there. Yeah, whoever prays harder, I guess. Okay, so we don't get involved in inducing, and if the doctor tries to encourage you to do anything like that, speak to a rabbi first, consult with the rabbi whenever these issues come up, because he may have other reasons of why he wants to induce it, and he's not necessarily right, unless there's a danger. There's a risk here, that's something else. However, if a woman does have a hard time, or I should say it's taking long for her, it's not coming easy for her to deliver, there are segulot remedies. Segulot are special remedies or certain things that she can do to bring it about in a special way, other than having the doctor do it. I'm not going to get into what the segulot are right now. If it ever comes up, ask me, because it's a little sensitive. What? There's certain things that she can drink or eat, but I'd rather not describe it now. If you ever have that issue, call me up and I'll tell you what segulot are listed in order to bring about a quick and easy childbirth. That's two things here. Quick, that's the segulot I just spoke about, but there are also segulot for an easy childbirth. And there's a list of them, and if you want to know them, if you're holding by that, let me know. What is that? All sorts of things. I have a whole list. Yeah. Well, segulot for both easy and quick childbirth. So if she's having a hard time, we will tell her what she can do to speed it up instead of taking an injection. Alright, this is something that a lot of women are not aware of. Shmira min mazikim. A woman who has just recently given birth or is about to give birth, and even her tinok, the baby that she has given birth to, are in danger of mazikim, of being hurt by demons. It's a known fact for those who are aware of these things. I said no, not everybody's aware, and that is why it's a good thing to be that she not be by herself in any room, right? So just like a chatan and kala, they need shemira. Certain people need shemira, need to be protected. There's a certain risk, certain level of risk for certain individuals, or anybody who goes to a makom sakana, as I've spoken about in the past. He puts himself in danger. There's a risk. The books are open. They are a little bit at risk, and they need shemira, and that is why you may have seen, and you can buy them at stores, segulot or kemiot, amulets of shemira for the woman and for her child. For the child that you can put it on top of the crib, for the woman who's about to give birth or who has given birth, underneath her pillow, Sefer Tehillim. You can also put
There are various things that you can put next to her that will, B'ezrat Hashem, hopefully protect her. But that's a fact. They need Shemirah. There's nothing you can do about it. Hopefully nothing will happen. But things do happen. And people wonder why. It could be because of Mazikim. So that's something that is mentioned, it's brought down, not everybody's aware of, and that's why I'm mentioning it now. There is a need for Shemirah and Mazikim during this critical period. Mazikim is a type of shed that hurts people, right? Not all shedim are in the business of hurting, right? So mazikim is called mazik, it hurts. It could injure you, it can cause harm. Yes? With a kosher mezuzah. Any door that has a good mezuzah, they don't have no permission to enter there. So that in itself is, no. Yes. During the beginning, especially until the circumcision, at the first week, perhaps. But I would put whatever kimiyai that you have for the entire first year, if possible. I mean, it doesn't hurt. You just leave it there. Because I can't tell you for sure when the danger is gone. There's always a little bit of danger, but the danger is greater at the very beginning. The more time elapses, the more time goes by, the less of the danger. But there's always a little bit of danger for a child. For a woman, it's only pretty much during those few days that she's bleeding, that she has just had her baby. What is that? You put amulets, kemiot, or various shemirot to protect her underneath her pillow. They sell them in stores. It's an amulet, a kemiah. You could put you could put tehillim. There are various things you could use for shemirah, and it's advisable. It's a good thing for both the baby and the mother. Right, since you mentioned that, I guess we'll talk about it. In the days of the Bet HaMikdash, when we had korbanot sacrifices, a woman would bring a korban todah. One of the korbanot sacrifices that she would bring is a offering of thanksgiving. She just got out of danger, and she had a baby, so she has to be thankful for that too. Today we don't have korbanot, we still have the blessing of Hagomel, which if a woman, if at all possible, should say it in front of 10 men, because you need a minyan, and it should be done in a modest place. In other words, you shouldn't just get up in the middle of the Bet HaKnesset and say Hagomel. At her home, 10 people are gathered there, or behind the mechitza, people should go over. And some say that the husband can say for her. She's listening. Yes. Yeah, I'm going to elaborate a little bit more when we speak about dam tohar and getting to nursing. I'll get back into that in a moment. Yeah. But before that, we need to just briefly talk about the signs of childbirth. In other words, a woman needs to know when she needs to go to the hospital. Not only because she doesn't want to deliver at home, but for another reason. Anybody know why? What difference does it make if a woman is about to give birth or not? Other than that she needs to go to the hospital. As soon as a woman is about to give birth, it's very possible that she's already seeing blood, or that her womb is open enough, several inches wide, which would render her tume'ah. And when that happens, her husband can no longer assist her. Hold her hand. I feel for you. Don't worry, it's going to be over soon. Be happy. She would like somebody to hold her hand. Well, her husband can no longer do that, especially once she has given birth. Then she's mamash tume'ah. But even before, she may be unclean. What happens that she should be suspect, that she should begin to suspect that the time is nearing for the child to be born? Several things. Either she can no longer walk, that is a big siman, right? She can no longer walk. Or she's already on her sitting or laying down in the hospital bed because she has tremendous pain and she feels, that something is coming. Or she's having continuous contractions about 5 minutes apart. That is a very powerful siman. Or the water breaks, right? Or the womb, as I said before, opens up considerably, several inches. All of these are indicators that she's about to give birth and she better rush to the hospital. However, they don't mean, except for the womb opening up, they don't necessarily mean that she's unclean. But she has to watch herself. She can no longer be with her husband, marital relationship. He could still help her, as long as she did not see blood. So if any of those things happen to a woman right before she's about to give birth, if she did not see any blood, her husband can still help her. Get into the car, hold her. Once she begins to open up, it begins and becomes several inches wide, then even if there's no blood, that's already called ptihat harechem, she becomes unclean. That usually happens, when she's mamash about to give birth. But sometimes women can be dilated for a while, and if it's dilated several inches, then she could be tume'ah. And of course, because you don't know exactly how many inches and so forth, you may not know. Then you should be careful with not doing anything which you would not be able to do with your husband while the woman is anita. However, if there's nobody else to help her, then obviously the husband can help her. If there's nobody else. But if she is mamash tume'ah, if she sees blood or she's opened up several inches, then
the husband cannot help. He has to get somebody else, if she needs help, to get her into the car and so forth. At the time she enters the delivery room and she delivers, if the husband wants to be in the delivery room, he's not allowed to look at the baby coming out. No, that's not modest, it's not right, and it's not a good idea for other reasons, for him to be staring at that time, at that spot, when the baby's coming out. That is the halakha. And men need to be reminded of that, because many men want to be in the delivery room. I myself was, 4 out of 5 times, I was there at the exact time. You turn away, or you don't look there, you go next to her, right? You don't hold her hand, you don't do anything else. There's doctors there to take care of her, and you for sure don't look at the baby coming out. Right, but that has nothing to do with staring at that particular second when the baby's head is coming out. At certain times, if you're lucky, you might be able to see the neshama or something going in through the head. It could be at any time, usually when the baby has come out. Right, I mentioned that, sure. Yeah. It's possible, yeah. Sometimes if they allow you to see, if they allow you to the eyes to see. The eyes can see many things, but we're not always allowed. But if for some reason they want us to see, we will see, right? Anyway, that happens right around the time when the baby's coming out. I couldn't tell you exactly when. All right, nursing. A woman who is nursing is in a class of her own. In the olden days, the days of the Gemara, the nature of men and women was different, believe it or not, than today. Not necessarily because they ate better and they were healthier, just somehow the environment, and for other reasons, things behaved differently than they do today. According to the rabbis in the Gemara, a woman who's nursing, or even if she's not nursing, but right after childbirth, for 24 months, she's not supposed to have blood. I'm talking about after the blood of the birth went away. She should not even get her period, especially if she's nursing. She doesn't have to be worried about it. Continue nursing as much as you can, so you don't get your period while you're nursing. If you don't get it, you cannot become pregnant again either, right? However, that's not exactly the case nowadays. Women can get their period even while they're nursing. That can have things have changed slightly. So many of the things that the rabbis tell us that this may or may not occur, if it has to do with the teva, with nature of people have changed, and things can nevertheless happen. So, because nevertheless she's in a class of her own, a woman who's nursing, she does not have the same dinim or the same halachot as an ordinary woman. In other words, if she had an argasha, a sensation, it would be the same halacha as a woman who's pregnant. She's not supposed to. It may happen, but because she's not supposed to, according to the rules, then she doesn't have to be concerned. She check herself, but if there's nothing there, so that's okay, because she's not supposed to see. Same thing, she doesn't have to be concerned with those regular periods that she would have had, whether it's irregular or regular. The problem is that once these women, whether pregnant or nursing, has blood, has a period somehow, then she has to be concerned the following month. It may happen during that time too. If it's real blood, it's not just a stain. But otherwise, they don't have the same concerns as regular women. During the time that she's nursing, during the time she's pregnant, she doesn't have to be concerned about those days. However, during the time of the Torah, the Gemara, Bet HaMikdash, we had something called Dam Tohar. Dam Tohar means clean blood. Did you ever hear something like that? There is actually clean blood. For a boy, for the following 33 days, after the Tumah of Leida, any blood that she would see is clean. After the Tumah of Leida, for a boy, after that's over with, the following 33 days of a total 40 days for a boy, it would be called Dam Tohar, clean blood. A husband would be able to be with his wife, actually, during that time, according to the Torah. It's called Dam Tohar, Dam Tahor, Naki, clean blood. It's not anymore the Dam of Nida or of Leida, it's clean blood. So, Torah is telling us that this is clean, you have nothing to worry about. She is exempt. Any blood that she sees for the next 33 days is called Dam Tohar, it's a separate class. Clean blood. Not today, after the birth. After the initial blood went away from the birth itself. That's Midin Torah. This you can see in Parashat Kitazriya. No, blood is blood, as far as I can tell. That's what it says. U'shloshim yom u'shloshet yamim teshev b'dmei tahora. The Chol Kodesh lo tiga. Of course, there's certain halachot concerning sacrifices, what she can eat and what she can touch. V'lamigdash lo tavo. She cannot enter the Bet HaMikdash, but she to be with her husband. It's not regular dam nida. It's clean blood. And for a girl, v'nekevat eled, and she's unclean for 14 days. V'shishim yom v'sheshet yamim teshev al dmei tahora. For 66 days, she has something incredible, something very interesting, how this works. Of course, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the human being, man and woman, He knows what the differences are and what happens exactly, but it's a different class of blood. Today, of course, we don't have this. Any blood, whether it's a stain, right, whether it's childbirth, whether it's pregnancy, at all times, blood even during those 33 or 66 days is considered unclean. In other words, we safek at least, since we're uncertain, we take all the precautions necessary, we take all the chubrot, we accept all the strict halachot, and a woman becomes a nidah, a regular nidah, if she were to see blood during that time. And of course, she cannot be with her husband during those days. And as I said earlier, the nature has changed and things are slightly different. But according to the real rule, according to the Din Torah, it would not be expected for a woman to see blood. Therefore, any blood that she does see is tahor. But today, the halacha is that she's unclean. She's considered a nidah. Look, I think we can finish with the last halachot of menopause. Woman continues to have the cycle, the period, for a number of years. As she gets older, progressively, it becomes less and less. She starts missing a period, or it's less days, or it's less blood. I'm not an expert in that, but that's what I've heard, that's what I'm told, and that's what I've read. What are the halachot then? The halachot is as follows. Even though this applies more to the halachot of the satot, of cycles, which I'll mention maybe another time when we go through those halachot. Nevertheless, I might as well mention it here too. If a woman misses 3 cycles, 90 days in other words, she did not see the regular period, then she has lost what's called the pattern of seeing blood at regular intervals, and she does no longer have to be concerned about staying away from her husband during certain days that she would ordinarily anticipate seeing blood. She's becoming, older. This is only true, therefore, with an older woman. If a young woman, for whatever reason, missed out, and that could happen to young women, trips and all sorts of excitement, things, pills and whatever, it doesn't mean she has lost the pattern. She still has to be concerned. Of course, even an older woman would need to go to a mikveh at some point if she has blood. She still will have the Shiva Nekiyim. But once she stopped forever, these halachot no longer apply. The only halacha that applies, and I think I mentioned that 2 weeks ago, before Purim, is the Dam Himud. Remember we spoke about a woman getting married? Even if this is not her first marriage, she's a widow, or she's a divorcee, she's an older woman, she's a grandma. Right before she gets married, she still has to keep the Shiva Nekim, 7 clean days. She has to check herself that she's clean before she goes to the mikveh, because there may have been Dam Himud, which would render her Tameah. Dam Himud is blood that comes from excitement, and there can be blood even for a second marriage. I hope she's excited, and because there can be, so at least she checks herself and she goes to the mikveh. But otherwise, after the menopause settles in, and it's for sure confirmed that it's gone, the blood is gone, then she doesn't have the same concern. What is an older woman? Anybody know what's considered old? For that to be true? There's a rule. If a woman is called a grandma, and she doesn't mind being called a grandma, she's considered old. As soon as a woman doesn't mind being called grandma, she's considered old. Because this age varies. It could vary. And it doesn't apply to a woman who's really young. It applies only to one who's older, and it makes sense. It's reasonable to expect that at that time, it could be that she's entering menopause. And when that happens, and the pattern has gone away for 3 consecutive months, then we can safely assume that it's gone. What happens, nevertheless, if it comes back? It could come back. After a while, all of a sudden it comes back. Coming back, for it to be considered a pattern, it would also have to come back 3 times. If it only came back once, it could be an accident. She would still be a nidah, but it would not be a pattern. And we'll speak about patterns, Dr. Hashem, when we speak about cycles, the regular and irregular cycles, what a woman has to be concerned of, how certain days she has to check herself, or at least be conscientious that it may happen, and therefore take certain precautions. Okay, I think I've covered everything as far as this area is concerned. Anybody have any questions? Right, then of course if it's twins, if it's a boy and a girl, you would have to wait the number of days that it would apply to a girl, because one of them is a girl. Nevertheless, it's still beautiful, right? To have twins, it's a beracha. Okay? Yes? During the time of pregnancy, that's a good question. I was going to speak about it maybe at some other time. During the time a woman is pregnant, it's good and it's healthy and it's proper for the man to be with his wife. No, at all times. So some of the months are better and easier for the woman and for the child. But it's okay. Right. It's a good thing, and there is, of course, the mitzvah of onah. On the mitzvah of onah, which a husband is obligated by Torah, by Din Torah, to be with his wife at certain times of the month, whenever it's permissible. He can't hold that back from her. She can't hold it back from him either. And during the time that he's pregnant, that continues to be the case. He is not exempt. It's still considered a mitzvah, and it's a good thing, as long as she's capable of handling it. So at certain times of the pregnancy, it might be more difficult for her. Right away in the very beginning, when she doesn't feel well, or right towards the end when it becomes difficult. But there are certain times when it's better than others. But throughout the pregnancy, it's permissible and it's a mitzvah. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem will continue next week.